The first light over the ice moons rose like a soft flame, and the alien princess stood on the balcony of her crystal citadel with a heart made of iron in winter. She believed in law and duty and the long future of her people, and she did not believe in love. She had a name like a bell in the old tongue, but humans called her Alari to keep it simple and kind. She wore a cloak of woven silver thread, and her eyes were clear like deep water below the balcony. The city sang with morning work, and quiet Hope Star barges drifted over canals of light, and the towers hummed with living stone. Council would gather at noon to decide the fate of the human envoys, who had landed from a small blue ship at dawn. The human mission came to end a border fire that had lasted 2 cold years. It was a fire made of pride and fear more than need, and it had burned both sides until even victory felt like a Shalari did. It's not hate humans, but she kept a firm wall inside her mind. The wall was built when she was a child and learned that promises can break like glass in a storm. Love was a promise without a treaty, and without a treaty it was nothing to Heron the court below the balcony. The human envoy waited with his small team. His name was Cole, and he was calm like a mountain road at night. His team had 3 women who spoke in clear voices and took careful notes on thin tablets. Nora carried a field kit and a stubborn smile. Megan had a way of listening that made silence feel warm. Claire had steady hands and a steady gazako, had learned the songs of the Crystal Citadel and the patterns of the living stone. He carried no blade and wore no armor, and he had crossed the war line unarmed. He believed that fear was a rope that could be untied with patient hands. He believed that courage was to stand still while storms passed over you. He believed that love was not a bargain. It's a brave choice that made the world wider. Raillery descended the spiral walk that flowed like water. Around a singing column, she stood before the humans, the court filled with the breath of many watchers and the soft shine of 1,000. "Fosetsu come with empty hands and full hearts," she said in the plain speech of trade. "What do you ask in return?" Bowed with a slow grace, and his team bowed behind him. "We ask for a future where our children do not learn the language of ruin," he said. "We ask for bridges that will carry both our peoples over the old Faresa murmur, like wind in a field moved through." The court, the elders watched with eyes shaped by long winters. Some were made from stone and song, and some were made from patience, and La Celery raised her hand, and the court grew still. "There will be terms," she said, "and proof, and a steady watch. On both sides there will be work and time and the slow repair of trust." Cole looked at her and saw a leader who held her people like a lighthouse holds a coast. He also saw a person who had built a high wall inside. He did not think to climb it with a ladder of sweet words. He thought to bring light to the base of it. Nora moved first among the citizens with the field kit and offered medicine from human plants and simple devices that eased breath and pain. Megan taught a reading circle for young workers by the Canal of Light and told stories about rivers and trees on a distant blue world. Claire repaired a water pump inside a market hall and laughed with the vendors when a valve sang like a bird. Court watched the humans in small ways that grew large. Ilari watched too, though she told herself that it was only duty. She watched Cole speak to a mason whose hands were cracked by frost, and she saw how he listened, as if the mason was a great teacher. She watched Cole return a small, lost charm to a child by kneeling to the ground and making the child feel like the most important person in the world. In the evening a shard storm rose to the north. It came like a white wall and screamed as the crystals in the air struck the living stone. A bridge over the Canal of Light began to fail, and a group of students were trapped at the far end without armor and without a blade. Cole ran into the wind. Nora and Megan and Claire followed close behind him. Citizens shouted that they were mad to go, but Nora shouted back that courage was a kind of math and that 4 hearts could hold more weight than Fairy. Lara felt the old wall inside her tilt. She left the court and moved on to the causeway that led to the bridge the storm cut. Her cloak, but her steps were steady. She lifted her hand and sang to the living stone so it would bend instead of break. Cole reached the students and formed a human chain across the broken span. Nora braced at one end and Megan at the other, and Claire moved in the middle with quiet words and warm breath. Cole knelt in the center and held the smallest student to his chest, while the bridge shook like a tired animal. He sang again, and the stone listened for a breath. The storm paused as If a two listened, Cole carried the smallest across, and then another, and another, and at last the last one was safe on the causeway. Court would later say that the storm bowed to the song of the princess and the will of the human team. When the wind fell, the canal glowed bright and clear, and the people of the city gathered to bring blankets and soup, and Storia Celery stood close to Cole while the stormlight faded. "You crossed a broken bridge without armor," she said, "and you held two strangers like they were family." Wybecco's family is a word we can choose, he said, and if we choose it often enough, the word becomes truth. Wall inside Ailery moved again, and she felt the strange ache of a new path. She did not believe in love, but she did believe in courage, and the courage she had seen was a seed that asked for water. Council met at noon the next day, and the decision was near. Some elders still feared the weight of old harm, and they spoke of lines and borders and the proper way to remember pain. Others spoke of the bridge and the song and the quiet ways. The human team had warmed the titulari, listened, and held the room steady with her gaze. Then she rose and said that the city would open a learning house near the canal. Of light humans, and her people would study there and fix broken things together and learn each other's art and each other's patience. She named the house the place of shared weather. The vote passed by a thin breath, and the court released a sound like rain on leaves. Nora, Megan, and Claire hugged anyone who would be hugged, and then they hugged the ones who would not until those ones laugh. At that night, the city held a quiet feast in the market hall where the valve had once sung like a bird. Old musicians played, and children drew maps of future bridges on long paper tables. Workers told jokes, and the living stone glowed. The gentle Pulsicole stood on the edge of the hall and watched the people he had almost lost on the bridge now. Safe and loud and bright, he saw Ilari arrive without her silver cloak and without the crown thread that marked her station. She looked like a traveler with clear eyes and a tired smile, felt the shape of a choice inside his chest. It was not a bargain, and not a tactic, and not a trick. It was a brave choice to make the world witter. Walked to the center of the hall and lifted his hands, so the musicians came to a pause. He spoke in a voice that carried like a warm lantern, said that he had come with empty hands and full heart, and that he had asked for a future where children did not learn ruin. He said that he had seen courage here in the song, and in the work, and in the ways. The people held each other when the wind rose. He said that he wanted to bind that courage to his own in the oldest brave way his people knew. He turned to Ilari, and the hall became quiet as snow, knelt on the living stone, and offered a simple ring formed from a crystal thread and a strand of wire from his blue ship. It was not a crown, and not a treaty, and not a weapon. It was a promise made in front of both peoples that he would stand brave beside her through storms and still water and work, and Timeth room did not breathe for a long heartbeat. Ilari looked at the ring, and then at the faces of her people, and then at his team, and then at the children with ink on their hands from drawing future bridges. She looked at the memory of the wall inside her and saw how thin it had become. She felt the ache of the new path become a clear road. Old her would have said that love was a promise without a treaty. And so it was nothing. The new her saw that courage could make even a promise into a bridge, and that a bridge could carry. Asidish raised Cole to his feet with both hands. She said that she did not believe in love as a sweet wind that solves all storms. She said that she believed in love as work and as brave weather and as the speech to people make with their feet. By walking the same road without armor, she said that if he would walk beside her, then she would walk beside him, and they would carry both peoples with them by example and by Pachincheshi. Took the ring, and the hall breathed again, and then the hall roared like a river in spring. Nora shouted, "Yes," in a voice that shook lanterns. Megan wiped tears from her face and laughed. Claire pumped her fist, and then hugged both of them, and then a child, and then the confused valve that tried to sing again. Feast became a promise the workers brought out, bread-shaped. Like small bridges and soup in bowls etched with waves, old musicians played a tune called Shared Weather, and even the living stone kept time with a soft pulsane the days that followed. The learning house opened its doors. Human children and local children learned to sing and to code and to plant and to weld. Nora set up a clinic where old pain could rest. Megan ran stories over tea where people traded rivers for canals and trees. Four Towers Claire held a class called Make It Whole. Delarian Cole stood before the council and signed a treaty that spoke of trade roads and safe passage, and